I think that's pretty common with a Monday night game. Obviously, next week's schedule will be different, but everything about our schedule was first and second down. Any questions?
You talked about Rumo earlier in the season. Obviously,
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges is, you can look at Notre Dame film, but really you're looking at the preseason and the 3 regular season games. Those are the 6 that really occupy the cut-ups, and that sometimes happens early in the year where you don't have, sometimes you're looking at 2.5 years. But we'll look at as much we can. I mean, there was a transition. There's some people that stayed from the old staff, and so that's what's in the cut-ups.
Having an extra day this week, is there anything in particular you did with your time or preparation?
Well, we had our normal Monday. Tuesday the players were off, and then yesterday we had what we call just a bonus day, and so it was more walkthrough. It was the introduction to the opponent, and so what it allowed us to do then today is the team meeting was real brief, and really get into the opponent film. So, a number of things we did today, we had a chance to walk through yesterday, and that's very helpful.
Trying to touch on it early down the work today, and you guys identified some of the issues.
Well, look, we started today. We had one of the topics was the penalties, and we're high in that category, 3 weeks in, but still nonetheless, defensively, offensively, near the back of the league, penalties team. Special teams, we've been clean. I think we're 5th. So, what are the things that put you behind? What keeps you from being inefficient on first and second down? And that's something that there are probably a handful of reasons.
How do you physically teach, things like offensive offsides or,
Yeah, listen, I think it's just the attention to detail, the focus, cadence, and making sure that, look, when you post, the penalties and then how many each player has, that has some significance to it as well.
Coach, you've got a 6-game winning streak right now. Is that just because the environment, or what is it about Denver that makes it?
Man, I think it's tough to play here for a number of reasons, and I would answer this question because I feel like I've been asked that before in other places. I'd say because the team is better. I think that at the start of the year we talked about, playing here, and it's a Monday night football. There's some things that I bring up that maybe the players and us coaches don't have in common just because of the age, but Monday Night Football was a big deal for me growing up. That that's when you saw the highlights at halftime. I mean, believe it or not, that's the only time you saw what happened during the weekend, and then you had to go to bed when you were 9 or 10. But Monday Night Football is still significant, and you're playing on national TV, you're playing at home. I think in a game that's very important. So, but yeah, I think our environment can be challenging.
Sean, J.K.'s added an explosive element for you guys. What have you liked so far?
I love the leadership, the focus. I said this, I think, earlier. Sometimes when you sign a free agent, you kind of know what you're getting with the runner, but all the other things that came were a bonus. And he is explosive. He's decisive. He's downhill. He's powerful. He's got good balance. So he's been a good addition, a real good addition for us.
Sean, you talk about the first 4 weeks in that race, but in your career, I guess you're right around 500 in September and then 75% in October. Why do you think you as a head coach, have made such a big jump in the second month?
That's a good question. I've seen those numbers, and so, this can be an early October game if we want it to be, right?
Coach, after the game on Sunday, you said that Monday was going to be just as important as the game. How do you feel like your team was able to?
I think we talked a lot about in the team meeting and then the breakout meetings and even relative to us as coaches, the installation, the things that we feel like we know well, not a completely back to basics, but to some degree we got to look at, those things.
It looked like you guys ran a couple of kind of specific concepts for RJ in the past game,
Sure.
on Sunday. Are you trying to kind of get him to ramp up?
Yeah, and I think
the Joker back?
I think what's hard, I think one of the things we drafted him because of his running skill set, and we knew he could catch the ball. So, between he and J.K., we see those guys carrying the boatload of what we're doing, and then Tyler helps us on third down. So we've looked at that. How do we want to split that? And I think we have a better feel for it.
Sean, obviously gets a lot of attention, but you're more than a year now into seeing Brandon, play back there. And I'm just curious what he brings to defense in general, and then also how he's sort of helped.
Yeah,
come along.
number one, he's extremely smart. He's a real diligent. Like he can overtrain sometimes, but football is important to him. And when you put two people together that have like personalities relative to how important the game is, and that are smart, especially at the safety position, I think it makes your defense better.
When you have a guy that might overtrain, like you said about Brandon, do you tell them to slow down, or is that?
Well, but Bo, the sports science stuff now is so, like, we'll get reports today on miles per hour, workload. It's more than just distance traveled. In the beginning, when it was first being looked at, I remember the first time I was looking at the O-line, the average, it was during training camp, and it was just miles traveled, and the receivers averaged around 6.5 in a training camp practice. Now that's from the minute they enter the field, right? And then I remember seeing Brandon Cooks at 8, and so making sure, that you're paying attention to soft tissue, but yeah, now we can really qualify what kind of practice it was, or quantify and know for sure how guys are moving.
You talked before week 3 about the importance of getting on the right side of the turnover battle. You were able to do that in week 3.
Yeah.
Sustainable, is that something?
Well, to finish +2, and not win the game, then there's got to be some other element. And I would say the 10 penalties certainly, we're forcing them to punt, and all of a sudden they got a first down. Well, that's like a turnover. But that has to continue. The ball security and taking it away. When we did that a year ago, it was dramatic, and so we want that trend to continue.
You said on Monday when you were asked about the bonus overthrows, it was like 50th on your list. When you evaluate those plays, are they just evaluated like it would be any other play?
Yeah, I just think
do as well as you thought.
Well, you got to be careful. Like when they're just off the fingertips. You're always looking at your technique within the pocket. One of them's a flea flicker, and we had seen in 3rd and long when you run a draw, there was a big collapse of the defense, and so sure enough. But no, I think that you keep firing. If it was something different, a lot of times maybe crossing routes to the left, if they're not mechanically opening up their hips, you can be behind receiver. There's certain things. But when it comes to the only thing I would say is, like Sutton's is a little bit of a double move. It was a seam go, and so guys sometimes aren't at top speed like your mind sees them. But just keep firing. He's going to hit plenty of those.
Sean, are you overall happy with this mix of picks?
Yeah. Meaning, look, there's times I'm sure when we sit and watch the tape, but. One of the things that's a gift is his off-schedule throws. So you just want to be careful how much you tell him. And then I think part of it is when you settle into certain plays, there's a rhythm to, the mechanics, whether it's 3-5 or play action. But overall, I think it's coming out well. The key is one of his great strengths is he doesn't take a lot of sacks. He's quick through a progression, and but I think you'll start seeing that.
Sean, do you feel like you have a go-to section on your offense yet? Things you can go to when it's not going well? Or
Yeah.
Bread and butter?
Yeah. And I think we've evaluated. That's a great question relative to where we are, and so it's important. And I think this sums it up, is to say, hey, this is an identity relative to running and throwing the ball. This is our identity. And I would say we've yet to establish that clearly for anyone watching or ourselves. And so that's us as coaches.
Sean, what kind of conversations, if any, do you have to have with Stephon after his personal foul because of the way he plays?
I think, I think he's super smart. And if you know him, he's so conscientious. He'll handle that.
Coach, when it comes to guys like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, do you prepare for them as if Joe Burrow was going to be the quarterback?
Yes. There's a stretch where, when Joe was injured, a couple of years ago, where, this quarterback is accurate, in rhythm, all of those things, and first down's important. If you allow him to get going, they've won a lot of games and played well with him. So we absolutely do, because it's not like the backup is a different type of player. He's a pocket passer. He's you know what I mean. It'd be different if who's playing now is all of a sudden a guy that scrambles, run, and so we would defend the offense, because the offense really hadn't changed.
Sean, you've obviously worked with more quarterbacks than just Bo and Drew.
Sure.
But Drew played so much on schedule, on platform. I mean, week in, week out, how different?
He did, and now he didn't. Yeah, one of his great strengths was in the pocket. He's a real good foot athlete, so he could subtly move and deliver. But we kind of have a short memory relative to when he arrived, and then the progression. And then I would say, from afar, you would have said, those were high-flying passing offenses. And if you looked at all those playoff teams, they were real good rushing teams. And so that balance was important always. And it will be for us and for the QB.
Sean, on the topic of offensive identity, how long, historically, does it take to establish?
I think soon. Soon.
Would you like to be further along?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you.